I guess that nearly everyone watching this video has something in common. We've all been interviewed for a tech job at some point. Recruitment for technical jobs is a big industry in its own right. There's a constant and growing demand for people with the skills to create good software. But recruiting to these technical jobs is widely seen as difficult and, to be honest, is often badly done. Why is that, and how can we make it easier, more successful process for both the interviewers and the interviewees? Hi, I'm Dave Farley of Continuous Delivery. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, please do hit subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video today, hit like as well. This video is sponsored by FileStack. FileStack is a set of tools and powerful APIs that help you upload, transform and deliver content. The file upload APIs that they provide make mobile uploads 100 times more reliable. You can modify content with their image, file and video transformation features and ensure quality and security on delivery with their copyright and virus detection tools. Sign up for a free account with FileStack and find out more through the link in the description below. Thanks to FileStack for sponsoring this video. If you're recruiting, you're looking for someone who can fit into your team or organisation and do a great job. If you're looking for a new job, you're trying to convince the organisation that you are that person, and you're probably also trying to figure out whether this is the place where you'd like to work. Interviews are by far the most common way of making these choices, but they're difficult and time-consuming for interviewers and for interviewees. There's also something kind of flawed in the process. In this episode, I will describe some of the common failings that I see in interviews and make some suggestions for the sorts of questions and answers that I prefer. I also have a few other tips on what I think is a better overall approach. These ideas are based on my experience of interviewing many hundreds of people over the years and of course being interviewed myself. If you have a different perspective or other advice, please do add them in the comments below. I think that we start to go wrong when we rely on recruitment consultants and shortlisting approaches that use tick lists to check off if someone has experience in specific tools and technologies. It seems to me a very common mistake to focus on the stuff that's easy to check rather than the stuff that really matters. Recruitment nearly always starts with resumes or CVs, lists of skills and technologies, which might, and I take this with a hefty pinch of salt, tell us what people have done in the past, but they don't really tell us much about what they're capable of in the future. The CV review is usually followed by an interview format, which then consists of a series of questions, usually with a predefined correct answers. So if you can decide with a tick or cross whether to employ someone or not. It may seem much easier to select people based on a list of technologies, but this is not really what you as an employer care about, or at least it shouldn't be. This is not the most important thing. With this style of interview, as an interviewer, you're trying to find reasons to reject someone, instead of aiming to get to know them well enough to uncover reasons to employ them. I think that the second of these is the much better strategy. Of course, experience matters, but what is it about that experience that really matters? Often, interviewers seem to be looking for some kind of magic recipe. 5 years of Python in a finance setting is mandatory. What most organisations seem to want is someone who has been working in exactly the way that they do, with exactly the technology that they are using, writing exactly the same kind of system that they are working on. What this is really saying is, we want replaceable developers and we don't want to train them. If you are an interviewee with any other options at all at this point, now is the time to make your excuses and politely head for the door. My experience has been that the best way to create great teams is to grow them yourself. Sure, hire talented people, but then help them to improve and help them to learn how you work and hope that they will be able to improve on it. Hire smart people and let them be smart. As an interviewee, if the interviewers focus only on specific technicalities in your past or your knowledge of obscure parts of the technology that you use, I'd treat this as something of a warning sign that the interviewers don't really know what is important. A good place to work will be an organisation that's good at learning and allows developers room to learn and supports them in their learning. In the past, I've hired people who had none of the technologies that we were using. I did that because I thought that they were good developers. Once, when I was building a system in Java on Linux, I hired someone who had only ever done C# on .NET. I'd rather have a great dev who knew C# than a poor dev who knew the intricacies of Java. Okay, so Java and C# are very similar languages, but unless your technology is very unusual, a good developer will be productive enough in a couple of weeks, even in the technology that they've never seen before or used. Pair programming helps quite a lot with this. And of course, if you're working on something innovative and leading edge, then your recruits won't have that pre-existing experience anyway. What we should be interested in is the person, their approach to problem solving, how they learn, how they work as part of a team. When I was head of software development for a development team that built one of the world's highest performance financial exchanges, we didn't hire anyone who had done that before. But we hired smart people who could work out how to do that. Of course, knowledge of the technology demonstrates something, but it's not enough. My impression is that the technology matters a lot less than the person. Why do they want the job? What might they be capable of? How will they fit in with the team? The problem with all of this as an employer is, how do you find that kind of stuff out in an interview? It's easy to ask hard questions about the esoteric features of a programming language, but this isn't a good way to choose people who will be good at the work. Because in the work, you can always look that kind of stuff up if you're stuck. What's the purpose of asking difficult or trick questions at an interview? Interviews are already stressful enough, and making it more difficult is unlikely to help you to find out what you need to know about the person. We can find out more at interview if it's more like a conversation, and much better than a series of questions and predefined correct answers. A great place to begin is by being really clear about the requirements. What is it that you're looking for? This applies to both interviewees and interviewers. I prefer to define some goals and some topics to explore based around the requirements of the job, but not to have fixed questions or, even worse, fixed answers that I assume to be correct. The kinds of things that I'm looking for during an interview are really very subjective. Would I enjoy working with this person? Will I learn something from working with them? Will this person make the team as a whole better in some way? Will they bring something new to the team that we hadn't thought of before? Will they surprise us? Can they explain their thinking so that other people can understand it? How does this person think about software? What do they value in design and code? What do they value in good code? What do they hate in bad code? Can this person defend their ideas and cope with their ideas being challenged? How do they tackle solving problems that they don't know the answer to? So what sorts of questions help us to get closer to these deeper conversations? These are difficult things to get at, and much more difficult than checking off lists of skills or asking trick technical questions. But they do seem to me to be closer to what really matters if our real aim is to hire well and then do a good job. I've done a lot of interviewing, but it's still sometimes difficult to tell the difference between someone who talks a good game and someone who plays a good game. I like open-ended questions, questions that begin a discussion. I went through a phase of asking people, can you explain to me how a computer works? There's no right answer here, though there are lots of wrong ones, but it works at multiple levels. Some people started talking about switches, bits and CPUs. Some talked about power supplies and motherboards and the cool graphics card that they wanted to buy. Some talked about the instruction caches, multi-core communications and QPI buses. Others stared at us like rabbits in headlights, surprised at the question, but then went on to give us a reasonable description. but a surprising fraction of developers seem to have no idea at all, or at least none that they could clearly express. These are interesting things to learn about a candidate. I value the ability of developers to express themselves. I think that the best programmers have a clarity of thought and a depth of understanding that allows them to explain their ideas clearly. And if they can't, how clear is their code likely to be? I dislike interviews and certification schemes that evaluate candidates on the basis of their memory. I often say when interviewing, we don't expect you to remember this. Pretend that we are Google and we will either tell you the information that you need or we'll look it up together if we don't know it. A good interview with a good outcome is just about as much about the skill of the interviewer as it is about the performance of the interviewee. Interviewers can get it wrong and have a bad day too. We humans tend to make snap judgments. In an interview, a candidate may say something that makes you think, no. And then we get ourselves into the rut of looking for other reasons to support our no. But that's a mistake. We've both invested time and effort getting this far, so it's good to learn some techniques for getting back on track. This is where the conversational approach helps. Change the topic, have some standby questions to get back onto safe ground. If you do think no, but think that the candidate should have a chance to change your mind, tell them that. Tell them what you didn't like. Then, as clearly as you can, describe what you think they could do to convince you to change the no to a yes. Give them a fair shot. Try and make your selection criteria, whatever they are, as clear and transparent as you possibly can. I find it helpful sometimes to offer my own answers to questions if an interviewee is struggling, for example. This may help them better understand what it is that you're really looking for, and then you get to see if they simply agree with you or take the chance to pick up and develop the thread in their own way. This will give you both opportunities to find out more and to make better decisions. This gets us to another point. If you're an interviewee, whatever your level of experience, my advice is to remember that you are interviewing the interviewers too, as much as they're interviewing you. Ask questions, state and defend your opinions. This is difficult sometimes, but it also helps you to show a bit more self-confidence and so present yourself as engaged and capable. If you're a junior, you almost certainly don't have all of the skills that you need yet. Any interviewer worth their salt knows this. Are you listening, interviewers? So don't get fazed if you can't answer a question. Instead, own up to not knowing the answer, and then explain in some detail, if you possibly can, how you would go about learning that answer. If the organisation is a good place for juniors to work, I think that they'll like this approach. If not, then ask yourself again, is this the right place for me to work? The interview can only take us so far. I recommend complementing interviews with a pair programming exercise, if at all possible, and certainly if as an interviewer you are at all unsure about the candidate. Actually, pair everything is pretty much the direction for the exercise. There's no better way to tell if people are a good fit for your organisation than to see them doing real work with the team. This will give good insight into people's skills, their approach to problem solving, how they respond to a challenge, and how well they work with the existing members of the team. If at any point the decision is a no, then my personal preference is to tell them there and then, as soon as you can, and tell them why. I think it treats people with respect to be honest with them. Don't say you'll hear from us later if you know it's a no. If you do tell them no, it will be clear that you're looking for different things, and it will give the candidate the chance to learn from the experience. Interviewing for technical jobs is not really a technical exercise, it's a social one. You'll have a better chance of success as an interviewer or as an interviewee if you relax a little bit and talk to each other as people. Thank you very much for watching.